What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name LeBron James? Or what about when you hear the name Adele? Now it's true that Adele and LeBron James probably wouldn't have much in common if they hung out on a Friday night, but they do share one big thing in common. They're both known for something. LeBron James, of course, is one of the greatest basketball players of all time. When people hear his name, they immediately think basketball. And then of course Adele, one of the greatest singers of our time. Now we could throw out some other names out there too. Steve Jobs, Abraham Lincoln, Peyton Manning. These people all have one thing in common. They're all known for what they've done. And while most famous people are known for great things, they can also be known for not so great things. You can probably think of a few celebrities who've made the news for something they said or something they did that isn't worth bragging about. But this isn't just true for celebrities. In your family, in your workplace, even at your church, there are people who are known for the things they've done. There's the person at work who's known for always being the top seller every year. And then there's that friend who's known for having an ideal life. They've got a great spouse, great kids, a nice house, beautiful cars. There's that family member who's known for always being willing to help everyone else out. But the people around us aren't always known for great things. Sometimes people are known for the ways they've actually messed up. Sometimes they're even defined by those things. Like the person at work who's known for inflating their sales numbers, or the friend who's known for gossiping about everyone else in your group, or the sibling who's known for being indifferent about anything and everyone in your family. And truth be told, we've all been there in some way. We've all felt defined, even for a moment, by a bad choice or behavior. But then, there's an entirely different category of things that can define us, and the things that we've done that no one even knows about. These are the secrets we carry around. These are things like cheating, just a little bit, maybe on your taxes, or an affair with someone at work, or maybe even privately blaming someone else at work for a big mistake that you actually made. Or maybe it's a habit you still can't shake, like drinking alcohol too much, or looking at pornography, or lying to your spouse. No matter the choice or the moment or the habit, just the thought of someone finding out about something like this is enough to keep you up at night. And that's why we work so hard to bury these things and make sure no one ever finds out, because there's nothing worse than being defined by something that you are not proud of. And when we carry around this identity, when we feel defined by a poor choice or a secret habit, it's easy to feel like we'll never shake it. Maybe you did something that's unfortunately become a part of your reputation. Or maybe you did or still do something that only you know about, and it causes you to continually feel shame. But more than that, these things can begin to feel like our identity. And when our identity is marked by a poor choice, harmful words, or a bad moment, we can begin to feel like this thing will mark us for life. And at some point, every one of us has felt defined or limited by something we've done. And the story we're going to read today perfectly sums up this feeling. Today, we're going to take another look at the life of Moses. Here's a recap of what we've discussed so far. Thousands of years ago, God's people, called the Hebrews, lived under the cruel rule of the Egyptians. And in order to limit the size of the Hebrew population, Pharaoh decreed that all male Hebrew babies be put to death. And in a crazy plot twist, the infant Moses was later rescued by the Pharaoh's daughter, which instantly changed his status from rejected to royalty. But even with that kind of good fortune, Moses still experienced a negative moment that had the potential to permanently define him. Here's what happened. Many years later, when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. During his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. After looking in all directions to make sure no one was watching, Moses killed the Egyptian and hid the body in the sand. Now, this is an extreme example of a bad decision, horrible decision. But I know we can all relate to one part of this story, the cover-up, right? Moses, he made a terrible, rash choice that could forever label his identity. And even though we make choices of a way less tragic variety, the aftermath is still the same. When we do something that we know will carry a consequence or make us look bad, our first instinct is to hide what we've done, so bury our choice and hope no one ever finds out. And for Moses, that's exactly what happened. The next day, when Moses went out to visit his people again, he saw two Hebrew men fighting. "Why are you beating up your friend?" Moses said to the one who had started the fight. The man replied, "Who appointed you to be our prince and judge? Are you going to kill me as you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." Maybe Moses felt his actions would find a friendlier audience among the Hebrews. Instead, he discovered that he was forever branded, that his words carried no weight, that instead of conveying security, he inspired fear. Then Moses was afraid, thinking, "Everyone knows what I did." And sure enough, Pharaoh heard what had happened, and he tried to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. For Moses, this was game over. One day, he was Egyptian royalty, the next day, he was a murderer. He would forever be defined by what he did, forever be limited by his tragic mistake. Chances are, he felt embarrassed and judged and hopeless. So Moses did what we all want to do when we feel embarrassed, judged, or hopeless. We run away. Moses ran away. He packed up and moved to Midian, a place far away from his home. 40 years passed, and Moses settles into his new life in Midian as a shepherd. But then something incredible happened. God showed up. And I don't just mean symbolically, God literally showed up and, get this, had a conversation with Moses, the murderer. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. Try to imagine what God might say to a man who had killed someone, hid the body, and then hit the road. You might think he'd say, "You cannot outrun me," or "It's been a while, but it's time to pay for what you did." But God didn't say any of those things. Instead, he said this: "The cry of the people of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how harshly the Egyptians abuse them. Now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt." Not what you'd expect, right? Definitely not what Moses probably expected. God was asking Moses to do something for him. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never asked a murderer to do me a favor. Call me crazy, but it does not seem like a good idea. But apparently, God thought otherwise. And the funny thing is, God didn't even mention the murder. He just appeared to Moses in the burning bush and basically said, "Hey, I have something for you to do. Let's go." Now, there's no doubt that God knew what Moses did, and there's no doubt how God felt about it. He feels so strongly about murder that he eventually placed it in the 10 Commandments. But even though Moses had clearly done something wrong, it didn't keep God from using Moses for something important. Think about this. At that moment, Moses was defined as a murderer, at least by the people in his old life, but not for God. And this reality is true for you too. God doesn't allow your sin or your mistakes to define you either. Look, murder aside, we've all made those "I hope no one ever knows" types of decisions. We've all battled those "I hope no one ever finds out" kind of habits. And while those decisions and habits may have consequences, here's what I want you to know. God doesn't think of that when he thinks of you. When you make a mistake, he doesn't cross you off his list or decide he can't use you in his plan. You may believe your mistake or your habit is the end of your story, but God doesn't. To him, your potential is still limitless. On his own, Moses felt exposed. He felt defined and limited by his sin. But when he encountered God, everything changed. Everything. Despite his sin, and before Moses even had the chance to redeem himself, God showed up and basically said, "I can work with this guy. I can use him." So thousands of years later, what does that mean for us? Well, here's what we can take away from this story. Don't bury what God can build on. Don't hide or cover up. Don't run away from what God can use. The reality is there's no mistake and no sin that God can't build on. He can make you part of His plan no matter what you've done. And if God can build on anything, what's the point of continuing to hide our mistakes? What's the point of burying the decisions that nag us? You can't move past your mistakes by hiding them day after day after day. Instead, you got to move past your mistakes by bringing them into the light. So don't bury what God can build on in your life. So what mistakes have you buried? What not so great decisions or actions have been limiting who you are and who you think you can be? Maybe you've been hiding a bad decision at work. Maybe you've been hiding an internet addiction. Maybe you've been burying a relationship filled with regret or burying the hurtful things you said about someone. No matter what it is for you, if you're ready to move past that moment, there are 2 steps that you can take. First, ask God to help you see yourself the way that He sees you. And do you know what He sees? Potential. He sees big potential. And this is huge because sometimes it feels like everyone is defining you by your past. It feels like you're beyond redemption, but God doesn't see you that way. God sees someone He can use in His big plan. And the second step you can take, bring your bad decision to the light. Instead of burying that decision and that behavior, tell someone about it. And I know this may sound crazy, but trust me, the only thing tougher than talking about your mistake with someone is trying to keep it to yourself. Regret, it grows in the dark. It becomes more powerful. But the opposite is also true. When you bring that decision to light, when you talk about it, that decision loses its power. So find a trusted friend, maybe someone in your church, maybe even someone here in this room who you can share your burden with. You are surrounded by people who love you and are here for you. So share what's eating at you with someone you trust so they can rally around you and support you and remind you that your future is not limited by your mistakes. Don't bury what God can build on. And don't hide what doesn't need to be hidden. Because God can use you just the way you are. He's not limited by your mistakes. He's not waiting for you to be the perfect parent or the perfect spouse, the perfect employee or the perfect friend or the perfect person before He can use you. He can use you today. So, ask Him. Ask Him to help you see yourself the way He sees you and bring to light what you're tempted to hide in the dark. And doing this, it's not going to be easy. But I promise you that it will be worth it. It's a big step in the journey to living a life without limits.